Aloha! Looks like everything is all good. There's changes. Not the time though. I had to change up my display third monitor around here because it was going all haywire and such. Besides that, there's also other things in the background I was doing. Not just this background, but also like name change. I finally put down my username. So, yep. Besides that, I'm also going to try something different. We're actually going to watch videos here. Mainly to focus on the background gameplay of 6 Days of Fallujah. Around the... Oh, they actually have it here. Which actually talks about these two guys. Which I actually do follow the show. Besides that, I'm just going to talk about them talking about the gameplay and such. So, yep. Without further ado, let's go through video here and see what's the uppity up. I remember distinctly there was a video that talks about how the gameplay loop is going to be the technology along with procedure generation, along with some of the characters, how they look, and how the gameplay is supposed to be. So this was March 23rd, so literally a month ago. Further ado, let's listen.
My name is Jason Kyle. I was a sergeant with Lima Company, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. On November 9th, 2004, I entered the city
Let me put some captions.
with 12
Alrighty.
Marines plus myself. And by November 13th, I was down to 4 Marines with myself.
Yeah, this is the person who was also on the articles.
6 Days in Fallujah recreated
Recent
stories
ones.
from the battle based on eyewitness accounts.
One squad has already walked down this alley, so we're just like walking down pretty confident, and like these guys just open up.
Yeah, he actually went back to cover and tried to stabilize it. Alright, he's actually...
That was the go command. One tap issues orders to your team based on what you're pointing at. Pin enemies in place with suppressive fire while you flank.
Yep, that's great, especially with him going through an opening, not standard entrance. Yeah. He has to confirm he's down, but I'm not sure if he's down.
Order your team to stack on a door.
Oh, it looks like he actually vanished.
The go command makes it as easy to direct your team as it is to fire your weapon.
Okay.
Go, go, go!
Oh, he's actually attacking through the window, suppressing fire.
The person who goes in first is never wrong. They have the most to fear.
And as soon as
Yep.
I walk in, I see a machine gun right in front of my face, maybe 10 feet, 15 feet from me.
Every time we would go into one of those buildings, you never know what to expect.
You don't know the layout of the house until you get in there.
Yep.
And then you still don't know it until you go all the way through it.
Room clearing, house clearing.
That's the...
Different every single time.
Yeah, that's
Marines and
the...
sailors never knew what was waiting for them.
the situation when it came to many of these insurgents tackling and such. The thing when it comes to Baghdad and a lot of Iraqi urban cities is that the urban cities were so urban that that this actually is one of the encounters, not even Afghanistan, due to Afghanistan, the good majority part, especially in the southern province, southern border region, has to be concern of not really many urban areas, but pretty much suburban and rurals. So, coalition forces actually going through these urban areas around the Arab world. It is a new experience, and Battle of Fallujah really tests on it. I mean, the important thing about the battle is that was what one of the major engagements of many people fighting insurgents. Before that, before that, most of the fighting that was big was actually during the invasion stage, where the soldiers were not, and the Marines were not actually on an occupying force yet. They were actually conducting shock and awe tactics, along with sprinting to Baghdad. And you actually have many different Iraqi forces, insurgents under jihad. That's one, but you also had regular forces along with the actual Republican Guard, Iraqi Republican Guard from Saddam Hussein's, and irregular paramilitaries. But this does showcase that this is actually a changing shift, and it was until years later that the coalition forces actually started understanding how to combat this enemy in Iraq, and it actually improved. I mean, improved to the point that it led to the end of the war. But most importantly, it also taught many of the ground-up government and ground-up Iraqi military, along with coalition forces, operate around the area, especially when it comes to the Syrian civil war. But it does showcase also the bad side when it came to many other insurgents, especially when it came to Daesh and ISIS, combating that. But yeah, that is the thing that is scary, because the way I look at it is, think of playing the game SWAT or Ready or Not, which is pretty much a SWAT police game that's coming out soon. That definitely looks interesting, but it seems to be like playing in a hardcore mode, because what is it? You had ways to intrude inside each building by surveying the area, using cameras, actually getting drones. I'm thinking of Rainbow Six Siege right now, but yeah, having all this intel and such. But when it came to fighting insurgents, you really don't have all those stuff. You only, well, the best thing you can have is intelligence of the region area, and even then, going to house, there's no way to be meticulous. You're not really you can't even fight a battle of attrition due to the mission objectives, and even effect of it has to do with civilians. So that does show the madness in always going through them, and most likely there's going to be a lot of hurry up and waiting, and moments where, okay, this is going to be just bogged down, stand a room clearing, nothing's going to be there, to, oh crap, there's an entire group of insurgents that are just pointing their guns at you. And that's a scary thing about that. Which definitely the people that are being betrayed are actually talking about that experience. That's why the procedural generation is important, where people, similar to Left 4 Dead, will play the game and always have this refresh experience of, we don't know the hell the zombie is going to come from, the special infected and such. That's the reason why special infected hiding in secret rooms where you just pass by, it's shocking. Now imagine an insurgent or a civilian that actually is an insurgent comes to that. I really want them to play in that angle. Because I remember when it came to Modern Warfare, they actually did that, and it was a spectacular experience, especially when it came to the second and third time where you actually have to do a night raid in the dark.
Marines and soldiers never knew what was waiting for them behind the next door.
Yep.
And if you want a realistic experience,
You got a bunch up.
6 days in Fallujah reshapes the battlefield every time you play.
Yep.
Each room, each building, even the entire neighborhood is generated procedurally. Every map is a new map. So just like actual combat, you'll never know what to expect.
I do wonder how the environment is gonna be. Is gonna be like pretty stagnant. You know how appealing the architecture is, which I mean, people like to disregard about it when it comes to open world, but just because the world is part of the experience to be visually appealing. But people usually don't talk about regeneration when it comes to other types of games other than open world RPGs. Probably just because that's something a lot of people, a lot of publishers try to market that way. But it could also just be because there's actually just a large push in technology when it comes to open world and sandboxes. But yeah, I do want to see the game push forward with this. I mean, hell, Spec Ops Lines, even though how good it is, really is just a standard shooter that its narrative is what carries the entire experience. But going back to it, it's a bit boring. So, if they're going to showcase the gameplay loop and have environmental storytelling related to the gameplay, the enemy combatants, the civilians, that'd be good. But I'm keeping in mind that when it came to the article about 6 Days of Fallujah, they're going to talk about the campaign and the narrative, the story narrative, which I do want to see cinematic cutscenes and how the story is going to be told, because that is something I really don't want. I want them to focus on the gameplay loop and to not focus on a narrative. People will be looking at the story of 6 Days of Fallujah with the actual characters and the gameplay itself. Oh yeah, and last thing is just the game just being appealing to look like. No, I think that that's not a real worry that the developers are looking at, because the truth is that when it came to many cities, it can be unappealing, especially when it comes to very, very urban cities and such. I mean, the thing I keep thinking about is NYC, where you have a lot of buildings that look pretty much the same. Doesn't include skyscrapers. So when it came to Iraqi city in Baghdad, they pretty much looked very the same, versus landmarks like mosques and stuff like that, which I do wonder if they're going to have a change or not. And I hope they don't try to change that, because it's going to be a bit of a something that will stick out, along with also showcasing other neighborhoods around those landmarks to showcase that whatever level you are, even though it's the same level, it's going to be procedure generated, and it's going to be slightly changed but look very similar. It's like going to another part of the city, and you could point at the landmark saying, "Oh, this is this side of the city," and so on and so on. But yeah, besides that, I'm just gonna play more to see what's it.
What's that door? Yes. Coming.
They're surrounded.
Contact! We got contact! Get my back! Go, 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 go!
Fathers and sons.
My son, he had his first birthday while we were in Fallujah. I wanted to take a picture. So I wrote happy birthday JJ on a piece of cardboard and I held it up. That was the most difficult day I had there. It dawned on me, it's like, I can't die on my kid's birthday. And that's all I thought about all day long, was dying on my kid's birthday.
Stand in your room clearing, and it's very dark and dim. The building, so it'll take some time giving directions. Make sure all the room is clear. Hearing some noises. So there's just no lack of hub, but this is pre-alpha sneak peek around here. Civilians.
So just think, you have this Marine, you're amped up, you got all this adrenaline going through, kick that door down in this like family of four. And I'm talking to the dad, I'm like, dude, like, why are you still here? He's like, عن طريق التلفزيون طلع فقط هذا عياد الله كان رئيس الوزراء
عيد الله
الشعب الزرقاوي موجود في الفلوجة وراح احنا نهجم وناخذه.
فلذلك الفلوجة يقدر نقول من درس العمليات طلعوا
وعائلتي وعائلة ابوي الله يرحمه طلعت.
Wow. 4K.
يعني هاي بالنسبة لهم عار بأنه يطلع محتل جاي ويطلع من
قال ما اطلع هذا ابقى قال اموت هنا يابا اطلع قال ما قلت له لا عاد اني.
I do wonder that the documentary part of the game where they actually did mention into interview and some of the articles is going to actually just be real life segments from other documentaries in the game instead of it just being all anime and cinematic, which I'm actually pretty on board on that. It could actually bring to life the actual real life situations, because it's blatant that this is going to be historically accurate and it's going to account so many controversial things related to politics, to moral issues around the conflict when it comes to war, pretty much. There's not many games that focus on real life conflicts, ones that are actually named and such. They actually have individuals, and it's in the dial, 6 days in Fallujah. But yeah, it would actually show the backdrop of what they said about why there is civilians in the city still. Because there is multiple reasons to it. Even the most unflattering reasons, which is they're just being kept there by the insurgents, and being told something different just to convince them to go. You have the announcement trailer, alrighty, and you also have vets. Woohoo! But something I do want to look at is the procedure generation. I believe that it's actually in the gameplay. So the one we watched, but we'll see what else is there. Alrighty. 6 Days of Fallujah. Victoria. High Wire Games.
Saddam had been captured. The Iraqi army scattered. Lawlessness and fear gave Az-Zarqawi his moment. He was prepared. They seized Fallujah, and the city was the first to suffer under their black banner.
These terrorists were armed to the teeth. No one will fight against them.
It had to be stopped.
Yeah, it showcases that
The country will turn over to Al-Qaeda.
November 9th, 2014. Take a point that this is also another reason why it's controversial. It was 3 years after 9/11. And something I looked at is that each passing year, the first passing years of 9/11, it was quite a... I keep on hearing like serious week, not day, but week on. But it is a nostalgic in a way that it is pretty sad. I mean, that's the thing with nostalgia, is just a time of feeling in a place that occurred in the past. It could be good and bad, which, people usually don't talk about the bad or the illness of nostalgia. Just a fondness. But it did show that around the week, a lot of people actually tried to have solemn swear, along with trying to have some 4th of July style celebrations. Probably just to remember this year, because at this point, it was still part of the zeitgeist of people showing some solemnness, and even to the point, even some patriotism when it came to these wars, including the Iraq War, because a lot of people believed that the Iraq War was part of the war on terror, and also understanding that being patriotic against a war that was a moral evil, which, that's pretty much what the Bush administration and a lot of other people would look at the war on terror. It is the reason why it's such a sensitive issue. After all, it's only been a few years since people saw Americans dying in such a tragic way in live television those past few days, when it happened during November 11th, 2001. Oh yeah, I also don't know about... This is not age-gated. Coalition forces launched the largest urban assault since 1968. 1968 is referring to Vietnam around the Tet Offensive. Oh yeah, let me actually pause this. So landmarks we're referring to is, pretty much you have the water tanks, mosques, and government administration buildings. But, these telephone dishes and such, I mean, the thing when it comes to living in urban areas is they can stick out And from what I know, when it comes to Arab urban areas, they usually would just be part of buildings itself, like sticking it out, because people are not going to be that picky when it comes to interior, well, neighborhood landscaping and such. People have to live.
City buttressed, waiting for us to come.
The only way you can clear a city is you have to search every house, you have to search every room, and you have to root out every insurgent.
We sustained hundreds and hundreds of casualties. A third of my battalion was killed or wounded.
That's
The bunkers they would build.
that's the thing that can be pretty hard for room to room clearing in an urban battle, which that is like one thing. People didn't have to know what was going on, and that shows one of the difficulties that happened in Battle of Fallujah. Well, I'm gonna talk about this later on, because what is it? We're almost done, and I think I can finish this all up in next time. Other than that, no.